I'm not frozen. Hey, everybody. Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. What is going on? Trying to go live on Facebook. Hi, everybody. Welcome today. We are talking about healing conversations. And we're going to continue our ongoing series every month. We are examining politics, mental health, looking unflinchingly at the emotional toll that this current leadership has been given to the American public, overwhelmingly so. Political violence and the legacy of white supremacy in public systems. And as you guys know, we have explored the psychological impact of Trump era leadership and its enduring effects on civil life. We have talked about malignant narcissism. Thank you, Dr. Buster, for that. Misinformation, moral disengagement, how that shapes public policy, the rising call from mental health professionals who are deeply concerned about the mental fitness of President Donald Trump and what this means for democracy, and how everyday people can cope with the political stress, exhaustion, and fear in an era of chronic crisis. So today's question is America at its breaking point? And if so, what does healing look like in the middle of this breakdown? So I am honored once again to be joined by Dr. Buster Ogbuagu. He is full professor of social work. He teaches social policy, social justice focused courses in the Department of Social Work. And his insights, he can talk about structural oppression, civic engagement, global social justice, all of those great topics that social workers like to discuss. Hello. But also joining us for the first time on Healing Conversation is another fellow social worker. Her name is Chasity Wells Armstrong, former mayor, village manager. Well, she's not a licensed social worker, but she has a social work degree.
I am a licensed social worker.
She's a licensed social worker. Yay! LSW. Thank you. Yes. And she's had a front row seat to how unchecked power, personality pathology, and misinformation, how it directly impacts public mental health and civic trust. And she is really talking about marginalized communities. So we are very happy to welcome her today. And we are going to talk about Chasity Wells Armstrong. Y'all follow me on Instagram. Let me talk about this, because if you go to my Instagram, let me find my Instagram. If you go to my Instagram page, Coaching with Dr. Alicia, I give a little bit of a summary of Chasity Wells Armstrong's latest newsletter. And you want to get with her newsletter, look in the show notes here. I'll put another post here. Be sure to subscribe to her newsletter here, and you will get all this information. She's helping you break down what's happening. And she had a recent newsletter where she's confronting the assassination of Minnesota House Speaker Melissa Hartman. Is it Hartman or Hortman? I think it's Hartman. An act of domestic terrorism fueled by white supremacy, and has sparked critical conversations across the country. But you know what? It has not sparked the conversations that we're going to have today. I haven't seen to date anybody really talk about this in the way that it needs to be talked about. So let's go right into the topic. I want to start with Chasity Wells Armstrong. Oh gosh, welcome here. Thank you for delivering such a very powerful newsletter. Tell us in your own words, what do you think is going on with this whole issue of domestic terrorism, and how does refusing to name it harm public trust and mental health?
First of all, hello, everyone. I want to thank you all for inviting me to participate tonight. My newsletter is called The Leadership Catalyst, and I publish it bi-monthly, so the second and fourth Wednesday of the month. And you can subscribe. Thank you for sharing the link, Dr. Alicia. So this incident that happened in Minnesota is a prime example of how white men in particular have been radicalized, and there's just a comfort and a freedom now.
Oh, wait, did we lose her? Oh, no.
There he is. He's back. He's back.
Oh, yes. Okay, keep going.
Okay. And so I'm not everybody's cup of tea, but I'm a very provocative writer. And in the last issue, I just called it out. These are tools of white supremacy. My newsletter primarily focuses on women who are in leadership and government leadership. And, having been the first Black mayor elected in my own hometown, I was subject to some of these same incidents of harassment, threats, and it's very common across the country. In fact, I've been doing some research with the University of Wisconsin about this very issue, and I've interviewed a number of women mayors across the United States, reporting increased incidents of violence, harassment, threats ever since Trump was first elected in 2017, which is when I was elected. And, because there is this culture of a cult following with him, no one calls out the extremism of what he represents.
Ooh, okay. So, hold on here. Let me get you back in with everybody else. Oh, wait, hold on. All right. So, thank you. So, you are doing some research in this area. This is the first that I'm really realizing this. You are finding that this is not an isolated incident. And by the way, the Minnesota couple that was gunned down, the dog was even gunned down. There were other people on the list, the hit list, that also was attacked. And if the police hadn't intervened, there would have been more people that could have been injured by this. Oh my goodness. Dr. Buster is joining us. Tell us, what is your initial thought about what is happening in terms of this huge incident?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Alicia, and Chasity for raising this issue. A very vexing issue, as a matter of fact. It was not just that Mrs. Hartman was murdered. Her spouse, her husband, was also killed. And they could not have died without the incendiary language and rhetoric that Donald Trump, he didn't start it. He just put steroid in it. Mm-hmm. America was already teetering towards this fascist behavior before Donald Trump came. But it was amplified by his audacity that lacked consequences. It didn't matter what he did. Just 3 days ago, the Supreme Court has given him 1 inch into the door of this, of denaturalizing American citizens to that extent. So there's a saying that if your dad sends you to burglarize a home, you don't pick the lock, you kick down the door. So that's essentially what's happening here. And I have no problem with Donald Trump. I don't even have trouble with white supremacy because it was here ab initio. It landed here with Christopher Columbus, but that's not the issue. The issue is that the media,
yes,
which has the responsibility of informing, educating, and entertaining, have been called into the corner where they are now scared to even open their mouth. Assuming that it was a Black man or a Latino that had murdered 2 sitting senators in a state, all the media would have been up in arms and would have named it for what it is, which is domestic terrorism. America is not going to be destroyed from without. Iran has no capacity to destroy America. Americans and white supremacists have the capacity to destroy America, and they are destroying it from inside out.
Yes, they are.
You want to talk about that, Chastity, because you mentioned that in your newsletter that, what was it, 80% of all the domestic terrorism is done by white males. And they have this manifesto, this ideology behind them, giving them power to do so. It's almost like the election of Donald Trump is saying, oh, well, thank you so much. Thank you for letting me be myself. I don't have to hide anymore. I can really talk. I have the strength to talk about this openly.
Absolutely. I was sitting here thinking about Dr. O's comment that he doesn't have a problem with white supremacy. So that I'm sitting here tilting my head. I'm sure I'd like to hear more about that. How can you not have a problem with it?
No, it's not that I don't have a problem. What I'm saying is that it's not the main issue. The main issue is that the system has been hijacked. We've lived with white supremacy since 1619. And we found ways to navigate them through the Civil Rights Act, through the Emancipation Proclamation, until this man walked down that elevator of hell.
The escalator.
Yes. So no, I'm not saying I don't have a problem. I'm saying that the problem now is that white supremacy has been given carte blanche.
Yes.
Because the media, when the media speaks with its authentic voice, things change. But the media is gone. Most of us now get our information from social media, which are much more authentic than the mainstream media. So yeah, white supremacy, I hate it to the core. And I'm not saying, I'm not minimizing its impact. What I'm saying is I'm amplifying the role that white supremacy has played now into the mainstream media.
Well, one thing that you brought up with the news, I think is very valid, is the fact that they're not holding him accountable. And when he kicked out the AP, in my opinion, they should have united. And said that if you put the AP out, then you're putting all of us out. Yeah. If you put them out and they can't cover, then none of us will cover. And that was a huge mistake that they made when they did not unite on principle. That, we have the right to freedom of, speech and, the press.
But who owns this press? It's white men.
That was another crack, in the system that harmed us. You're absolutely right. And the other part is the fellow members of Congress. They have cowered to him. They're worried about being primary. They're worried, about all these things, and they have a responsibility to their constituents. I mean, and the U.S. House represents 750,000 people.
Yeah. Each
member in the U.S. House. And they are not thinking about their constituents. They're more concerned about Donald Trump. And then, of course, the senators have the entire state, whatever the state population is. So I see it as, yes, the media and also the fellow members of Congress. They are not walking in their lane and walking in the authority that they have as members of Congress.
But the problem with I still understand the members of Congress. They are not there, essentially speaking. The philosophy under which they were elected has changed. The Fifth Estate is the last bastion of control that, with regard to fascism and the Fourth Reich, which I have now termed the United States. The media should not be tethered to the apron strings of anybody because it's called the Fifth Estate for a reason. You cannot primary the Fifth Estate. But however, the Fifth Estate has been primaried. NBC was sued and they paid for a case they would have won single-handedly. They jettisoned all the people who spoke truth to power. They either resigned or they forced them to resign because they are afraid of their position. This is the same system that the Third Reich used to rout everybody. Members of Congress, we have never trusted them as our own bastion because many of them are there to gain traction in the political, mainstream. But media, of which I am one, as a broadcaster in Nigeria, I was incarcerated for many years, and I stood my ground. And these were military dictators who will kill you on sight. I come from the jungles of Africa, where the rule of law does not, obtain. However, this is supposed to be the United States of America, which was the light on the hill, as Reagan. I'm looking for the term. Growing up in Nigeria as kids, our understanding of what was right was the United States of America's democracy. And we strove and we walked towards it. And then now we are here. It's like we have just called a ticket on the Titanic.
This is very good, Dr. Buster. I'm going to tell you, welcome everybody to people who are just joining in here. A text is going out real soon, and more people will be joining us. Let me tell you, we're talking, the title of today's discussion for Healing Conversations is Trump's Mental Health. I will be talking about that. And America's Breaking Point. We are talking about how white supremacy is winning. And each one of us, as I'm sitting here listening to the three of us talk about this, we all have our own personal story of things that we have gone through. And I want to have hope for the future. I want to have hope that things will get better, but I'm not quite certain. I mean, I think about my story. I was born in Tuskegee, Alabama, which was I was born in the same hospital that the Tuskegee syphilis experiment took place. The same hospital. Not to mention, I was raised in Gary, Indiana. Gary, Indiana used to have the best public school education in the nation. People used to come back in the 50s and 60s. People came from all over the country to Gary, Indiana to find out what is going on with the school system in Gary, because all those students in an all-Black city were thriving and doing very well on standardized exams and everything that every marker that indicates success academically, Gary, Indiana used to hold that. And it's a systematic thing, macro level things that slowly deteriorated an entire group of people, both in Tuskegee, Alabama and Gary, Indiana. If you go to those two cities outside of Indiana University Northwest, outside of Tuskegee University, those two cities are dilapidated. Like, we are losing in this way. And so if you guys feel comfortable, talk about your own story and your involvement. Dr. Buster, maybe we'll start with you, because you started talking about this global issue, because you are from Nigeria, child of the Civil War, who fled to Canada, and now here in the United States. Talk a little bit about this, because it's so salient, because your story and my story and Chastity's story is a reflection of all of our stories.
Yeah. No, it bears without saying that I have multi-layers, sedimented layers of trauma, from childhood. From before I was born, because I am a colonial subject. We used to wave the Union Jack under the rain for Princess Alexandria and members of the dysfunctional British royalty, to pass by. And of course, by the time I was in my 7th grade, we had been forced to read, memorize, and dramatize the 12 works of Shakespeare. And we spoke the Queen's English at the risk of physical chastisement. If you were not allowed to make a gaffe in your language, in your grammar, in your syntax, in the sentence structure. And then, of course, they forbade us from speaking our own languages. Nigeria has about 650 languages. Most people can't speak it because of British inroad. Most of our parents, the white man who designed them to be hewers of wood and drawers of water, scrubbed their traditional name and gave them English names. And then they had the system they call divide and rule, indirect rule, which is what is happening in America now. America is bifurcated. Those who are going to hell are on both sides. And America, it's in between, somewhere there. And of course, the British also suborned the Nigerian Civil War, which started from 1967 to 1970, of which I was part at the time. You go to my village, you still see scars from those. And of course, today we have Boko Haram, we have terrorism. I can't show you the graphic images of people being dismembered and their body organs harvested for sale.
Today.
Today, as I speak. Because the Fulani hegemony from the Sahel of North Africa have descended into there because politicians use them to subdue people. So in the case of the United States of America, white supremacy is using ICE and is using all the systems, the accoutrement of suppression, to silence people.
Yes.
So that's essentially where we are. Yeah, I took flight because of the content of my program, because I am vociferous and I have no apologies for it. And I really, there's nothing you can do to me that I haven't already experienced. And, when I arrived in Canada, I came with 2 duffel bags. One was mine, the little one, and the other was my then 7-year-old daughter, who practices internal medicine. She's now gone to, Philadelphia. And of course, this is what white supremacy sees, and they are scared. They think these people are coming to take our jobs. However, what does a brain surgeon from Syria need the job of a high school dropout for?
Yes.
We don't need that. So this is, and then they heighten the fear. It's called white fear and white flight.
Yes.
And because of that, they see you, they see me as the problem that they have. But the problem they have is not us. It's inbreeding. It's incest.
Yeah.
It's lack of education. It's addiction to opioid.
Yes.
Because remember when it was crack cocaine, and then they said all the white supremacists said, kill all the blacks, put them in the dungeons of American prison. And then suddenly it was their turn, and they were dying exponentially, much more than black youths have died. And now they remember that they have to apply empathy. And that's why you have NACAM all over the place now. So that's where we are at. It's white fear and fragility that is brought. And then, of course, the people who support the white supremacists who are not white think they can feed from what falls from the master's table, the crumbs.
It's an illusion.
Yeah, I call them people who think that joining forces to self-immolate will increase the size of their penises. It's not, because they still have the small penises, regardless of what they do. They will never become white. They will never be accepted. Look at all the people who ran thinking they were going to be vice president for Donald Trump who were black. You don't see any one of them. And then these other people, black Latina, are afraid of black women who have risen from the ashes of oppression of what black men have education, are exponentially more educated than the black men. And they don't need, most women, black women do not need a man to survive. The men do need them. So that's where we are at.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Thank you for sharing your story. But underneath all of this white supremacy really is the deep-seated feelings of insecurity, of understanding and knowing that you're not as much of a man
Mm. You know,
as the others.
there's this thing about oppression.
Yes.
If you oppress me externally, it doesn't affect me. If I internalize the oppression, it
Yeah.
then attenuates and stultifies all effort I make to rise above it. So these people are suffering from internalized oppression,
Internalized oppression. Because
which
how are
leads
we
to
sitting here?
paralysis of the mind and the body.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, look at, even though the suppression is there, look at us now. Like nothing really can stop us. Thank you, Dr. Buster. I really appreciate that, because I've shared my trauma historically. You shared yours. Chasity Wells Armstrong. I love saying all three of your names.
I know.
Chasity Wells Armstrong is my favorite name in the world.
No, I love her. I love her name. That's why it was
Isn't
not.
it great?
Easy for me to
Chastity. The
remember
word
it.
chastity is beautiful. Okay.
Yeah.
So tell us, Miss Chasity, tell us what is your story, and so that everybody can get a better understanding of all of us and where we're coming from, because we know what we're talking about. Tell us your story in politics.
Well, I never had any intentions on running for public office. But I was a non-traditional student, so I started getting my formal education in my 30s. Had a great policy professor that I absolutely loved. And when I really realized how impactful policy is and how it's used to create systems of oppression and uphold them, I was really led to go into that work. So I ended up serving as a policy fellow in DC in 2007. And I knew at that time, this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to work in public policy. I had been asked to run for public office. I thought people were nuts. I still had two kids at home at the time. And so I started out in a small position, like a committee woman, and started getting involved in my community with the domestic violence board. I was a leader in our National Association of Social Workers, Illinois chapter. I was Calumet chair and then vice president. And so just started getting more hands-on experience and being more involved in the community. And then in 2015, I ran for city council, became the first Black woman to represent my ward. And then decided to, try to have a conversation with the mayor at the time. She was a white woman. She was the first woman that had been elected. And I grew up on the east side of Kankakee. So Dr. O talked about white flight. I lived through that in the 80s in my hometown. And that's when you saw, factories leaving, communities, gangs, were prevalent, gun violence, and it's still prevalent. Those gun violence is still an issue in my hometown. I went to talk to her because when I was on city council, she never once called me. She never asked me for a vote. She never discussed anything on the agenda. And I wanted to know why the east side of town where I grew up looked the way that it did. It had been divested for decades. And when I went to see her, she literally was like organizing things on her desk. She was not interested in anything I had to say. And I had to fight to get that meeting, even though I was an elected official, because her executive assistant would gatekeep. And, what's your question? What do you want? Kind of thing. And so at that point, I was like, she doesn't even see us. Like, she really doesn't see us. And so I decided somebody needs to run against her. It didn't have to be me. It wasn't about being the first African-American, and none of that. It was about getting somebody in office that saw the entire community and that was going to work for the entire community. And so they underestimated me, like they always do Black people. I did not come from an affluent family. I did not have a political family. They didn't know who I knew. They didn't know I could raise money. And they were completely blown away and devastated the night of the election. In fact, they started orchestrating a strategy to come after me. And they really did for 4 years. I mean, for the entire 4 years, it was hell. So, and they, and they use the tools that they always do, that we're not qualified. We need to hang the flag upside. They were so devastated. Like we should hang the flag upside down. I mean, it was just, it was insanity to me. I didn't have a fire chief. The police chief left didn't have a conversation with me. This is very common. If you look at Black women, in fact, 2017 was the year of the Black woman mayor. So that was, I think Essence dubbed 2017 as year of the Black woman mayor. And so it's a very common experience that when we become the executive and we are driving the agenda, hell breaks loose.
Mhm.
And I was naive thinking that they would cut up for maybe a year. But once they saw my heart and once they saw how hard I'm working, that they would come around, because if people run for office, they obviously care about the community. They have different agendas.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them are there to get inside information because they have businesses or investments and those types of things. They're not concerned. And so so it was, it was a rough 4 years. I worked really, really hard. When you talk about disinformation, it was constant. And that's a tool that they use as well. So they really try to shrink women, and that's why I'm so outspoken in my newsletter and just call things out. And I call men in my newsletter to give them tips on how they can support women in leadership, because we see the tactics all the time. She's not qualified, or she slept her way to the top. I mean, these are the same things. They did it with Vice President Harris.
Yes.
Yeah.
We saw them do it with her. And so it's a very consistent playbook that they use to try to shrink women, shame them, humiliate them, shut them down, and discourage them. And I'm here to support them. We need women running for public office. We are 50% of the United States population, women.
Mhm.
We are 50% of the workforce. And when women have the resources, they take care of their families and they take care of their communities. And I am unapologetic about that.
Mhm.
Yeah, I really love what you're saying.
And we need men as allies.
Yes.
Absolutely.
We need men as allies to let them know that the ascendancy of a woman to a position does not jeopardize yours.
No, it does not.
If you are not qualified to be anything, you let the people who are qualified to do it, because women hold half the sky.
Mm-hmm.
And they need men as enablers, as allies to get it done, because these men, most of them have daughters.
Mm-hmm.
So they need to bring themselves to a position where they are not scared of their own daughters. Because God forbid, one day their daughters are going to be in a position where they are not supported and dragged down. So it comes without saying that common sense is not common. So aside from just women, because women do not populate the earth all by themselves, there is something called men. And men should be women's allies for those who hold half the sky. And for the fact that every single man, to all intents and purposes, have women in their lives, unavoidably so. So it's stupid to self-immolate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I really like this because it's so funny. Like my home institution, when Donald Trump became president, it was let's talk about what that means. And I had nothing to say. I had nothing to say, because the only thing I have to say is you'd rather hand the country over to someone who's a blatant racist, narcissist. You'd rather hand the country over than to see a Black woman in leadership. And I just did not have the words to express it, even at my home institution or around some of these so-called allies. I don't really see, I'm using air quotes because in my experience, I don't see an ally. I don't have an ally that I can feel like I can really engage with. And so I don't ask me what I think, because I know you don't really care. And I don't trust you. So I'm never telling you how I really feel. What's going on with me, you're never going to know.
He said he loves the poorly educated.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the country has been ran by incompetent men. I mean, that's what they do.
Yeah.
Well, I want to welcome everybody in.
Remember when President Obama said he didn't have enough experience because he had only been a state senator?
Yes.
Yeah. And Trump has never held elected office. He hasn't served on a school board.
It's a double standard.
Yeah, and the niece said that somebody sat his essay for him and got paid. So they prefer somebody who is not only a blatant racist and narcissistically disordered personality, they also wanted somebody who was grossly incompetent. And of course, America, those who voted him deserve him.
Yeah, that's really something. And I also look at like Michelle Obama, some of the attacks that she's been getting. I mean, she is killing it on her social media posts and everything she's talked about. She's so articulate, and I really see and really explains what it's like for her being in the White House. She's been very outspoken. I really love that she is doing that because it just resonates with everybody. I want to talk about the No King protest here for a second because as Dr. Buster knows, I've been really talking about how we're going to resist. Let's shift the conversation. The last few minutes of our discussion about answers we're at our breaking point as America. There have been more and more people that have been waking up. The No King protest was the largest protest in the history of the United States of America. I was happy to when I saw that. It's grassroots power. Is the resistance, do you see the resistance really swelling and winning? Or are we just going to see more Congress people just kind of bowing and allowing a certain element get its way? How do we define winning in this era? And because we're still fighting for safety, we're still fighting for truth, we're still fighting for leadership that reflects justice. And how about we go to you, Chasity? Tell us what you think. Give us some perspective here.
Well, there are some things happening. For me, when I see women stepping up to lead and not being intimidated, that's a win for me. Virginia, I believe, is getting ready to have a woman governor. And that's through ranked choice voting. So there are some groups that we have, like Represent Women, Vote, Run, Lead, She Should Run, Emerge. There's these different groups that are really focused on helping women get elected into office. And ranked choice voting is an initiative that allows people to campaign civilly. So if you're in front of an audience and, if you're going, if this person is team Dr. Alicia, well, make me your second choice. And it's creating a culture where people campaign in a way that's on the issues, that's not personal attacks, it's not disinformation, it's on the issues, is in a way that's very civil, and it's more representative of who the voters want. So when I see that, I look at that as a win. I think we win by building community wherever we are, where we feel safe. And I think we win by continuing to advocate.
Okay, building community and advocating. I like this rank voting of choice voting, RCV, which is all about the issues and not all these other things that don't matter. You are ranking people based on these issues. I love the fact that women are starting to be involved. I will keep an eye on what's happening in Virginia. Dr. Buster, what do you have to say? No King protest. Are we resisting?
I was out of the country as I am now. So, but I was glued to all the media, not mainstream media, because I lost trust a long time ago. They are liars. They are knaves. They are not even worth the paper upon which their names are imprinted. So I saw it as the largest movement. However, we can move all we like. The issue is in those who we have bestowed the power to implement the policies. In the end, it lies with 435 members of the House of Representatives. and 100 members of Senate. And the biggest problem is we know that the Republican Party is a lost cause.
Mm-hmm.
But the Democratic Party is not far behind.
Yes, that's what we were talking about.
The only thing worse than a Republican is a Democrat. They can never seem to get their acts together. Mm-hmm. They are fixated on perpetuating themselves infinitely, that when they see young people who are actual agents of change, they run them clean out of town.
Yep. Protect the status quo.
Yeah.
When I benefit from this system, I don't want it to change. And we saw that with New York, right? We saw that. You know, how do we criticize Donald Trump for being a rapist, you know, a person that commits sexual assault against women and it's inappropriate? And then you put money behind Cuomo.
Yeah.
He was accused of the same thing. And that's why people are pissed off with the Democratic Party, because you can't have the double standard.
No.
Now they did not. There was someone, I don't remember what representative it was, that got in trouble around the same time. What was that man's name? George, the one that had the fake identities. He was a New York. George Santos, was that his name? George Santos.
George Santos.
It was it was a Democratic congressman that had misused funds and that sort of thing. Yeah. So I will say the Democrats don't come out and support and condone people who have done wrong, committed fraud, or, you know, that kind of thing. But to put money behind somebody like Cuomo, it's a bad look. It's a bad message, and that's the stuff that has to stop.
Yeah, and then the issue of dynasty. The issue of dynasty. Cuomo's dad was in charge.
Right.
Cuomo himself came, and his younger brother used his opportunities of power,
privilege,
to promote his brother, who, by the way, is no better than Donald Trump in everything that he's done. He's not only a bully, he's worse. So the biggest problem we have, like I said, the only thing worse than the Republican Party is the Democratic Party. It was Debbie Wasserman who gave us Donald Trump in the first instance, because she did everything to make sure that Bernie Sanders did not win the primaries. And then, you know, and shooed in Hillary Clinton.
Which people did not want.
They didn't want that dynasty.
No, at that time, we didn't want.
She had a lot of blood on her hands. Although I don't think she would have made a terrible president.
And you will see that Debbie Wasserman is still voting with the Republican Party, even recently. So if by a stroke of providence, the Democrats can rebrand themselves, because virtually the cranium is empty.
So what are we supposed to do? What is the answer?
Chuck Schumer won against D'Amato, who was his professor, and he hasn't done anything for the Democratic Party since he was there.
Mm-hmm. And who's speaking out? Who are the voices that are speaking out? What is going on? It's the women.
Yeah. And then they brand them. Alexandra Ocasio, if they had a way, had a way, they will harm her. This guy who killed Mr. and Mrs. Hartman had 70 people on his hit list, 70. But nobody is calling it out. So, to all intents and purposes, this fever can break. Donald Trump is not only a man-child, he's also yellow-bellied. I remember when the Mueller report was coming out. He was scared. He said, "I'm losing the presidency." If the Democrats can rebrand themselves, remember what the word rebrand, put some brain back. The next election, the midterm, it's November 3 next year, which is around the corner. Therefore, to this extent, and because both the House of Representatives and Senate are just a couple of members short of the majority by the Democrats, if they had a way and have a sense that they carry with them, Donald Trump will become a lame duck by November 4.
Oh boy. Well, he's got his big, beautiful bill that he's putting through, and it looks like not enough Republicans are going to come up to the other side. It's gonna happen.
Yeah, that's the resistance that really matters.
Yes.
If we can all march across the globe, if the people who are supposed to make and implement the policies are eunuchs, nothing is going to change.
So what do you think is going to happen? Are we going to have more protests? Are we going to have more and more people on the street?
What needs to happen?
Approval rating is so low.
Yeah, what needs to happen is to make sure that those who have been bought and sold, whether they be in Democratic Party or whether they be in the Republican, are not allowed.
Yes.
I think I said that in my newsletter, didn't I? That they all should be voted out, that the people that have been complicit.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's get a list.
Yeah, and when you vote them out, the rest of them will take a cue from that.
Because even Democrats that confirmed appointees in the Senate, Senator, why would you confirm Tulsi Gabbard?
Yeah.
The FBI guy.
Yeah.
Why would you confirm?
Yeah. Why would you even confirm Marco Rubio? Little Marco.
Yeah.
Little Marco was an anchor baby at the time he was born. His father was not a citizen. So today he has no birthright citizen.
The woman that's over Homeland Security.
Yeah. Yeah.
They should
be. The dog killer.
Yeah. But the thing is that Tulsi Gabbard and Hagsett, they're fighting right now. They're not even listening. Tulsi Gabbard was like, "Here, did you read my briefing?" He's like, Donald Trump said, "I'm not reading the briefing. I don't read anything. I just go by what I feel." He's bypassing everybody, even people in his own cabinet.
Yeah, but he's not called Hell's Gate for nothing. He's incompetent. He's just a soldier. He has nothing. And then, of course, I'm sorry for genuine alcoholics. He's an unrepentant alcoholic.
You talking about Hegseth?
Hell's Gate. Yeah.
Hell's Gate. That's his name.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are and of course, and there's this DOJ woman. And we were telling them about Project 25. They didn't listen. They were more interested. Even the nice people were more interested in eggs and milk. They are not getting the eggs and they're not getting the milk. So the people who are voting live in trailer homes if they can afford it. So that's the biggest resistance. The other resistance will be to create a term limit for the judiciary.
I'm all for term limits.
Because the last the last constitution, the last revision to the U.S. Constitution was in 1992.
Yeah.
So it wasn't. We're not talking about 1776. So which means that the Constitution can be changed.
Absolutely. And I agree, they should not be there for life.
No.
Because we saw increasingly, especially from George Bush and 9/11, how those who are policymakers relinquished their positions to the executive.
Which is what they're doing now.
Which is what they're doing now. And I can't for the life of me believe that a Democrat will vote for anything that will be inimical to the growth and development of their constituencies. But they do, because they either have been bought and sold by the IPAC or anybody. All it takes is a chunk of money and they are gone. So that's the resistance that will really matter. One that makes sure that the Constitution is changed, amended to make the judiciary give them term limits and term limits for Congress.
Term limits for Congress.
For crying out loud.
Okay.
We saw the slippery slope with 9/11 and the Patriot Act, which people like Clinton voted for.
Yes.
So those are some of the things that need to change. We need to make sure, especially with the Democrats that we have, to make sure that those who are complicit are not allowed to continue, in their brigandage. I could say service, but they are not performing service. They are engaging in brigandage.
Yes, I just saw Dr. Alicia shared a comment that the branches of government are absolutely supposed to be co-equal, right?
Yes, Black Panther.
And that's what he's doing, is he is trying to get more power under the executive branch, and Congress is not fighting him on that. They're allowing him to do that, and so is the Supreme Court with some of their rulings. So,
because the Congress has majority of MAGA, therefore, to turn the tables, the Congress, the majority of the congressional body has to shift, and if it shifts, then when he makes his executive order or something, Congress will disapprove, and he will become automatically a lame duck.
Hopefully we have elections, because he said during his election that you just got to vote for me one more time. We got it taken care of.
Yeah.
So they are being very aggressive at trying to implement as much as Project 2025, as they can. Yeah. And as soon as they can, getting as much push through. And a lot of these things he's doing is he's testing the waters to see what he can get away with.
And he's getting away with everything.
Everything. And
he
has walked back on some things. So I do believe the protests are like with the farmers, right?
Yes.
He's walking back some of those things when he's seeing that people are out in the streets and they're upset, and this is how we're being impacted. We don't have workers. We have people. Our people are scared to come to work. Because he said he was going to get all these criminals off the street, but his Stephen Miller, I guess, is giving the order to round up 3,000 people every day, and so they're just trying to hit a quota number instead of going after people who really should be who are harmful and detriment to our country. You mentioned the news. Gavin Newsom, you are aware, has filed a lawsuit against Fox. Fox should be completely shut down. They already were sued for $700 million for lying.
Mm-hmm.
So he has filed a lawsuit against Fox because of the lying and the disinformation and around his conversation with Trump and all the shenanigans in California.
So my question is, why are all the other states not following suit? Because what Donald Trump's hegemony is doing is that it's inundating us to obfuscate and distract. And that's a plan, one of the plans of the Project 25. When you give them this and they are mulling over it, bring in another confusion. I was shocked that only Harvard stood up to Donald Trump.
I thought it would be so much more, many more universities standing up.
Especially the ones that have, deep pockets.
Deep pockets, yes.
But they all, assumed fitter, stance. And the man is riding everything roughshod.
And meanwhile, he's showing, as a clinical social worker, he's showing signs of dementia. He's mispronouncing words. He is falling asleep every time he goes somewhere. He sits down, he falls asleep. That's the sign of dementia. He is a malignant narcissist. Is nothing. I predicted that he and Elon Musk would never get along, and they haven't. He can't get along with anybody. It's going to be nothing but chaos, because Donald Trump is a bully, and he will bully everybody. And it's an interesting saying. Is oh God, I can't remember the whole thing. Correct me if you can. It's like he will burn down everything so that he can be king of the ashes. Who said that? He will burn everything down just so that he can say he is king of the ashes.
Yeah. But let me tell you something. McCarthy was here as a senator. Where is he? He consumed his own 4,000 weeks of life. Because if we are lucky, we will live to be 4,000 weeks old, which is 76 years old. Can you imagine that 4,000 weeks is 76 years old?
Wow.
So eventually, their clock is going to run up.
The thing
and they are not thinking about the legacy they are leaving for their own children. Nobody has forgotten Joseph McCarthy today because of and what my Donald Trump president, it's exponentially 1,000,000 times larger than what Senator McCarthy did.
Yeah, and some of the stuff people are saying may not be reversible if we get someone else in office. So there's really something to think about and to pay attention to. And oh my gosh, it's almost the bottom of the hour. We got to have another conversation. If we don't have it in July, because I got a lot of travel, we definitely going to talk about this again in August. And I will invite both of you back on. I got Dr. Chris coming on. We got a bunch of people. Maybe Dr. Boyce will feel more comfortable coming back, and then I have to put my boxing gloves on when I talk to him. And so maybe we'll put him back on because we have to continue this conversation. I realized I didn't even really introduce myself. I am Dr. Alicia, everybody, and with Coaching with Dr. Alicia. Follow me on Instagram. I always have political stuff on there. And yes, as a therapist, I do believe that, mental health and therapy, political is personal. Political is personal. I am a therapist. If you're interested in working with me, there's my website, Coaching with Dr. Alicia. You guys know the deal. Text the word LOVE to 87948 to get text updates. And of course, you got to follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Coaching with Dr. Alicia. Look in the comments. I'm going to write in the comments again how to get a hold of Chasity Wells Armstrong. Let me copy and paste in here. Can I do it? Yes. Copy and paste. Oh, wait. Copy and paste in the chat all of the different ways that you can subscribe. Just subscribe to Chasity Wells Armstrong. How about we take a few minutes? I know it was a lot that we had to discuss today. We'll start with you, Chasity. Some parting words, some more information that you want to convey to everybody that was written in your newsletter that maybe we didn't get a chance to cover. What do you have to say to us? Tell us before we leave.
Again, I just want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. My newsletter is The Leadership Catalyst. Dr. Alicia shared it in the link. My website is ChastityWells.com. And I primarily work with women who are either elected or appointed to government leadership and the teams that they lead. So I help with strategic planning. I help women to navigate the biases they face as women in leadership, those gender biases, help them to stop over functioning and set some boundaries so they can maintain their health and wellness, and also help them to build strategic partnerships so they can have more impact in terms of their vision, executing their vision, and building capacity to do the work that they want to do. Dr. O, you mentioned about men being allies. I want to thank you for raising that issue. Again, in my newsletter, every issue I provide a section called Ally in Action, and it speaks directly to men. So men can subscribe to my newsletter as well. And I provide a free downloadable resource to help women. In the last one, I provided one, I think it was Democracy Security Project. This is an organization that's helping electeds to stay safe. So I always provide some type of resource to help our women in leadership. So I want to thank you all. If anyone is interested in running for public office or is in public office and need that support, I am here to support you. We need you. We need your voice. We need your activism. We need your perspective. And you don't have to do it alone.
No.
That is so great. Rank choice voting. Is that what it's called? Ranked choice vote. I never heard of that before. I'm gonna take a look at it.
But I adopt that. States have to adopt it.
Beautiful. And I don't think we need to see some of this violence and think that we have to ignore it. No. Think that we have to, I don't want to get into politics. I don't want to get into that kind of stuff. Maybe this is a signal that all of us really do need to get into politics. We need to advocate for term limits. That would be the best resistance there. Get some of those people out who have been greasing. Their pockets have been greased by these big corporations. And it's not just Donald Trump doing it. He's doing what all the other presidents have done, and Obama included. So we're nonpartisan here. Go ahead. Dr.
Wait a minute. Now that's another conversation. I can't believe Obama is being compared to Trump in terms of greasing his pockets.
He has. There has been some criticisms about some of the things, the policies that he's had. I've listened to a few people talk about some of the things that Barack Obama, not to the level of what Donald Trump is doing, but there has been all the presidents
gave away his Nobel Peace Prize money. Okay,
it's true.
We'll talk offline.
It's true, but he's not a total saint on a lot of things. There were some things that he's done that I kind of scratched my head about, and I was like, I don't know if I agree with everything that he's done. I don't think he did enough in office. I wish that he would have done more, but that's my.
But he couldn't have. He's surrounded by white supremacists.
I was just getting ready to say that was John Boehner. Yeah. They were blocking everything he did.
Yeah. I remember that he just
let him appoint the Supreme Court justice. Yeah. Remember?
Yeah.
Yeah, he did some pretty good stuff, but he wasn't, some of the things he did, the bombing of that Libya, and some of the things that he did, I didn't necessarily agree with. Some of his policy.
Nigeria has actually accused him of electing a former general who destroyed Nigeria by sabotaging the existing president at the time, Dr. Goodluck Jonathan. But the thing is this: he who is without sin, let them cast the first stone. Mm-hmm. He is not a saint. All the saints are dead. But there is no moral equivalency between President Obama.
No.
They set all kinds of traps for him. There was none that was explicit. They even came after him for wearing a tan suit.
I remember that's when I went to work in Congress, was when Obama was elected. Yeah. So I lived through that.
Yeah. And then Michelle for wearing a sleeveless dress.
How she's been scrutinized is unbelievable.
Yeah. So for me, my last word is you have to be the change you want to see.
Yes.
And how do you become the change you want to see? You have to deliberately use your human engineering. That means you need to vote. You need to get out all those who are not advancing you, because anybody who cannot increase you will ultimately decrease you.
That's a word.
So don't think you can't change things because it's just you. There is something we refer to as critical mass. It takes much more persons to form this critical mass, and you have to be deliberate.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Final words from you, Dr. Buster?
Yeah, that's the issue. This fever will eventually break, but we have to be responsible for it breaking.
Okay, well, term limits, all the chaos. Hopefully, this big, beautiful bill will not get passed. It looks like it will get passed, but I hope that it won't. I like some of the things that we've said here to contribute to the resistance, and I think healing is possible. I don't think we're helpless. We're not broken beyond repair. I do think that the No King protest reminds us that resistance is alive, even on the streets. People are starting to wake up. in a peaceful way. And I think that's so important for us to get involved. Please subscribe to Chasity Wells Armstrong newsletter. Her link is in the chat. Don't forget to text LOVE, LOVE, to 87948. And watching more episodes on YouTube, go to Coaching with Dr. Alicia on YouTube. And I want to say goodbye to everybody. Thank you for joining us, everyone. I see you in here, Black Lexicon, Rhonda. Welcome, Rhonda, and everybody else that joined us tonight. Goodbye, everybody.
Have a good night.
Have a good night.